My name is Frank Kodak, and today, December 12th, 2013, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak with a respected member of the law library community, Lyonette Louis-Jacques, French and Foreign and International Law Librarian of the D'Angelo Law Library at the University of Chicago. Our conversation is part of the Oral History of Law Librarianship project, a component of the Spinelli Law Library Reference Shelf on Hein Online. The setting for this conversation is a conference room at the headquarters of the American Association of Law Libraries. Leo, it's a great pleasure for me to spend some time with you today talking about your life and career as a law librarian. To begin, let's chat just a moment to learn a little bit about you personally, and can you tell us a little bit about your early life?
Well, I think the first thing that is important for people to know is that I was born in Haiti. You'll figure that out when I give presentations, because sometimes I'll say the I as if it were an E. So my Creole from when I was born in Haiti, and my French sometimes creeps into my presentations.
Which is a very charming part of the presentation.
Thank you. When I was very young, we moved to New York, and my one experience I think people would be interested to know is, of course, I didn't know any English. Somehow I managed to pick up English, and in the public school library, I think I read all the biographies in the public school library, including one about this golden president who I think turned out to be, the one who was involved in the scandal. But I was very interested in those. And I also worked in the Queens Public Library. So I think I was 13 when I was shelving books. And I read all the young adult fiction in the public library. And after I did that, then I graduated to the large type because there was nothing left for me. And the only large type was like Barbara Cotwood, Georgia Hire, Mary Stewart. So early on, I started liking romance novels because that was what was available to me when I was a teenager.
Very good.
And then my family moved to North Carolina, and I continued to work in libraries until I got to University of Chicago.
Okay, very good. What do you like to do when you're not working? What are some of your interests, your passions, pursuits outside of law librarianship?
Well, I continue to like reading books. My favorite is to read and collect romance novels. A particular time period, the Regency period, Regency romances, and I've had all the Georgia Hires, including her mysteries. I have Nora Roberts, I have Janet Ivanovich, so I could probably fill a whole room with just the romance novels that I own.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I also get into phases. Mm-hmm. So one phase that I had was photography, so I was taking pictures all the time, every single day, putting them up on the internet, photoshopping them. And right now I'm in my, latter phase of social media mania. So I was on Facebook a whole lot for a long time, and everybody knew about it because I wrote about it. Then I was on Second Life for a long time, and I wrote about that, so everybody knew about that. And so now my third life is Twitter. I'm on Twitter all the time, and I've written about that. So I don't know what the next, emerging technology I'll be fascinated with, but that's, yeah.
But we know there certainly will be one. We just don't know what it is.
Right.
Well, very good. Thank you. It's nice to know something about your personal life, and it's also nice to see a librarian who reads. So can you tell us a little bit about your educational and professional training and perhaps your early career aspirations?
Okay. When I got to the University of Chicago, the college, I had no idea what I wanted to be. I picked the University of Chicago because it had a library school, a law school, and a medical school. So I figured I can't go wrong. Yeah. So the first couple of years, though, being the sort of person I am, which you can sort of figure out, I just enjoyed the heck out of student activities. So I acted in plays, I performed, and I did a lot of things. But then, I had to figure out what I would major in so I could graduate. So the easiest thing I could major in was French, because I already had that, because I was taking French throughout grade school and high school. But I also took 1 year of German and 2 years of Spanish. And I have no idea why I did, but those were some of the most interesting classes because I got to think about language in a way I hadn't thought before. I would spend hours in the library stack scouring the dictionaries for where words came from, how you parse them out. It was very fascinating. And then I had to graduate, so I graduated. So I just wanted to finish college. After I graduated, I had no idea what I was going to do. So I worked in the law library for a couple of years after I graduated. Throughout all of college, I was working. So, from 13 onward, I've been working. So I worked in the main library. I was a bindery assistant. I was an exit control attendant, so entrance-exit control. I did barcoding. I learned a few things about management styles at that time.
I'll bet. Yeah. So you learned the library from the bottom up.
Yeah. And then while I was in college, I also worked in the law library. So I was a circulation desk attendant. I was evening supervisor. Then I was, what else did I do? Oh, I also filed loose leaves. So basically everything you could possibly do in general libraries as a non-professional and in law libraries, I did.
I think that's a fabulous background for a librarian to really understand what's going on.
So what happened was, when I was the evening supervisor, there would be no reference librarians around. So the students were coming to me and they wanted to know where they could find F-second. So, really easy, basic questions. And I didn't know how to help them. So the librarian at the time at the law library was Dick Bowler. I don't know if you ever got to meet him, Dick Bowler. He gave me a copy of Legal Research in a Nutshell. And I read it cover to cover, and being me, I did, I highlighted it, most of it. And I found out that I liked being able to answer the basic questions and having the students be happy and helping them. So I decided I wanted to be a legal reference librarian.
And this is while you're an undergraduate working in the law library?
After undergraduate.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I decided that to be a legal reference librarian in an academic library, I needed to have a law degree and a library science degree. And I applied to a couple of law schools and a couple of library schools, not the University of Chicago Library School because it had a writing requirement, and I did not want to have to write anything. I learned hard lessons from college. Never take a writing class. So I got into Michigan Library School and the University of Chicago Law School, and I decided to defer the law school for the library science degree.
Okay, so you admitted to both at the same time and decided to do library first.
Yeah, and my thought was, I've been working in libraries most of my life. It didn't require a paper. I should be able to finish this and at least have that under my, in my hands, under my belt, before I tackled law school, because if things didn't work too well in law school, well, I had a library degree.
That makes sense.
So it worked out.
So you completed that library degree, and then you went on and 3 years later completed your JD from the University of Chicago. I think you've already made it clear that by that point you had already decided that law librarianship was going to be your career path.
Yeah, but the thing that was still left, because it's an odd thing about a library, being a librarian and a potential lawyer. My family had no idea what being a librarian was, but it's like, oh, you got into law school, you're going to be a lawyer. So while I was in law school, I had to decide, do I really want to be a law librarian? To make sure that I could tell them, yes, I tried it, didn't like it, well, didn't like it, it wasn't suitable for me.
Absolutely.
So when I was in law school, I continued to sort of work in ways that I could figure out more about law librarianship and more about being a lawyer. So I worked in a legal aid clinic. I represented, it was the employment discrimination clinic. And so I actually had clients, because in Illinois you could be a student attorney.
Yeah.
So I had a client, I had to sit next to a more expensive lawyer to represent my client. I worked in a patent law firm over the summer. I worked with the Legal Assistance Foundation. So I got to experience what it's like, what lawyering is like. But also at the same time, I was a cataloging assistant for Lorna Tang. I worked with Judith Wright. So I kept working to figure out what my career would be. And pretty much didn't change my mind.
but you gave it a fair trial. You
Yeah.
really tried out both, and,
Yeah.
and clearly you thought a lot about it.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Well, let's move on then. So I think we've taken you through completing your degrees and working part-time while you're doing that in the law library. Then you were ready to start your professional library career, and you began work at the University of Minnesota Law Library, and you served as their foreign and international law librarian for 6 years before returning to your alma mater in 1992. So you had spent a lot of time at Chicago, then you go on to Minnesota. I'm wondering both kind of what led to that move, and do you think that was a good position at which to begin your professional career?
Okay. As I was really busy during law school, so
I know I'm tired just listening to you.
so I wasn't thinking about a job after. I mean, these things that I was doing were experiences, but they were not like a specific job after law school. So when I graduated, it's like, oh, I need a job. And it turned out that at the time, University of Minnesota was looking for 2 librarians, to sort of beginning reference librarians they were looking for. And with one position, they wanted one with foreign language skills. So I said, well, yeah, I'll go. I'll apply. So I applied, and Kathy Price hired me and Warren Reese at the same time. And I was a foreign and international legal reference librarian. And the thing about Minnesota with Kathy Price at the time is that she wanted to grow. She was really worried about the next generation of foreign law librarians because the profession had East Europeans who had substantive law skills, degrees in foreign countries, fluent in different languages. They were really specialists, and they were either dying or retiring. And
many of these after World War II.
Right.
So, and we're talking about several generations later.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so she wanted to grow the next foreign international law librarian. So I had the basic ingredients, she thought. I had the languages. And so while I was at Minnesota, I had a lot of opportunities, mainly because of Kathy's interest in international and foreign law and her management style. So I got to teach the first international and foreign legal research course with Suzanne Thorpe.
Wow.
I got to practice some of my languages. I had a supervisor, Tom Waxler. I don't know whether you know
Tom very well.
And Tom Waxler made me translate every single German title I selected for him, which was a good discipline for me and not too different from when I was in college translating German. And in retrospect, I appreciate it, but right now it's like I would never do that to anyone because it really slows down the process. But it was an interesting experience, and I got to teach American legal research as well. So I got to be a generalist by teaching regular classes to 1Ls, first-year students, and also learn my specialty. The other thing she did was she sent me to Europe. I'd never been abroad before on a practicum. So I was able to go, I went to Germany, Switzerland, Belgium, and in one of them I learned how to work with UN documents. So I learned a lot about UN documents. I learned how to travel, the different practice languages, the currency. So it was good at the beginning of my career to get that under my belt.
How long were you, how long was this practicum?
I think it was a couple of months. Yes.
Talk about forward looking and Well, that's tremendous.
Yeah, so I was at Kiel for a while. I stayed in a student dorm, so I got to practice Northern German. and to this day, that's the language that I still kind of use when I try to talk to people in German. It was wonderful. The only other thing the other thing she did was she set it up so I could have an apprenticeship with Adolf Spruce, who was at Chicago at the time. So he taught me how to select foreign and international material. So she enabled me to become active in the American Society of International Law, the International Association of Law Libraries, and the professors there, the faculty there, like David Weisbach, Fred Morrison, Bob Hudek, the people who were involved. I was a liaison to them. So I was learning to partner with the faculty at the same time in the field. So
if I can use the idiom, she not only talked the talk, but she really walked the walk. She took it seriously. She didn't just say we need to do something. She did something about it. That's tremendous. That's a very valuable story. I'm glad to hear that about Kathy Price. I'm not surprised. I know how meaningful she's been in the profession, but very, very nice. So I don't want to foreclose you if you have other comments about Minnesota, but in 1992 you left Minnesota, came back to your alma mater as the foreign and international law librarian and lecturer in law here at the University of Chicago, and that's a position that you've held since then. So, that's a long time in one library. I'm curious to hear if you have some thoughts about kind of what has kept you there. Obviously, with your background and your skills, I think you'd be a very attractive commodity at many other places as well, but you've stayed here.
Yeah. I thought about, I think that it's mostly Judith Wright. Judith Wright, when Mr. Spruce was about to retire, sought around for replacements for him. And
Judith was the director of the
D'Angelo Law Library at the time. And through she picked me to replace Mr. Spruce. And so ever since then, I've been trying to be Mr. Spruce. If you know anything about Mr. Spruce, which I'm going to tell you if you have.
Please do. I would love to hear about Mr. Spruce.
He was Latvian, so he was one of the old guard East Europeans, so he had multiple languages, German, various other languages, mostly a bibliographer, but really knew the bibliography and substantive law. So he knew about foreign legal systems. He was also a leader in the profession. He was president of the International Association of Law Libraries for a long time. He was a scholarly librarian, so he edited books, some of the indexes to treaties and books about treaties research he'd written. So the literature that we were using to teach ourselves to be foreign and international law librarians, he created. So when I got there, he was still coming to his sixth floor office every day. So he was there to sort of continue with my apprenticeship, continue to teach me and mentor me and being a foreign and international law librarian. So since I got there, I've been trying to be a scholar librarian. And I've been trying to be a leader in the profession. And Mr. Spruce is really hard to match. The other thing I needed to do, because Judith wanted a different take on it. She wanted someone who not only was that, but also worked the general reference desk and did more sort of like the public services component of it. And so that's been the challenge that's been keeping me one of the things that's been keeping me at the University of Chicago for a long time.
But that's a great story, and I totally understand that. And I just wanted to also mention, in addition to everything else you said about Adolf Spruce, he was also a recipient of the ALL's Marion Gould Gallagher Distinguished Service Award, richly deserved, and very real treasure. And then to hear how he, in his name and also in his actions, passed that on and is keeping that alive through you, that's tremendous. Very good.
And it's something that I find constantly challenging to leave behind something for your profession through your scholarship is just, to me, just a challenge. The other thing I wanted to point out is that it's the University of Chicago. Even though I sort of got there because it had a library school and a law school, there's something about the University of Chicago that appeals to me. So it's the college, that it has a motto, where fun comes to die, and hell does freeze over. So it's really a place that has unique people and focuses on the life of the mind. So I like being back in my alma mater, where I spent hours playing Scrabble till 8 o'clock in the morning because I found someone just like
You
me.
weren't the only person.
Right.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fabulous. And it's obviously a tremendous law school and resources there, but it's part of a world-renowned university in the university community. So, and it's in a city like Chicago.
Right, and the faculty that have been there, like Jack Goldsmith taught there, Tom Ginsburg is now here, are making an impact in the field that I think is interesting and different. So I like that too.
Very good. Thank you. So you've said some very nice things about Mr. Spruits and his contributions in the field of foreign and international legal information and research. But the truth is, and you're probably too modest to say it, but I will say it, that you've been a driving force in that field yourself for many years. I think you've probably already begun to touch on this, but I'll ask you directly if you can explain a little bit to us about why this field is of such interest to you and perhaps its importance for both lawyers and law librarians in today's world.
Yeah. I think what's happening is the world is getting closer. More and more research questions and legal issues involve foreign and international law. So even someone who has a domestic law practice will have to find a treaty sometime or find a foreign, Child Protection Act. And especially like the people who are doing pro bono work for immigrant children, for instance, they might need to know about refugee law, children's law. So it's a smaller world, and it's an area where you don't get a lot of chance to get training in them. So it's important to develop people with skills that can quickly lead someone to where they need to locate an answer. Help people negotiate the research, because they're not going to be taught how to research foreign international law in the first year of law school, or some of them a lot throughout their law school career. So.
Very good. So over the years, you, in light of what you've said and in support of that, you've created and maintained a wide variety of publications, research tools, communication devices, listservs, etc. Most about foreign and international legal information and/or its research. Do you have a favorite among the things that you've done, or do you want to just tell us a little bit about some of what you've done?
I think I have a favorite, and then there are a couple of things that I've done that have been sort of intriguing to me as to how they got to be useful. So my favorite is Ent Law. So Ent Law was started when I was at Minnesota because I was a new librarian, and from having traveled to different places, I liked the idea of us being able to, and listservs were new at the time. So Mila Rush and I at Minnesota started Ent Law so that librarians around the world could email each other on one list and ask and share information and ask each other questions. And that list has continued. Like other listservs have fallen by the wayside.
Yes.
There are just a few, but that list has continued to be high quality and helpful to people, even now when some people could say that listservs are dying. So that's the big one, and it's useful for me in my work. So it's something that I created that I'm still finding useful, and it's useful for other people, and it's spun off other things. I was listening to Ellen Schaefer's talk, oral history interview, and she said that from Ent Law, she decided that it'd be great if not only could we share experiences with foreign law librarians through the listservs, but she could fund a grant to have them come and be in person with us at AALL. To me, that's one of the things that happens when you have people exchanging information.
You get to know them at a distance through the listserv and so forth, and it makes you want to know them in person.
Know them in person.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. That is really a very traditional librarian kind of thing. You were collecting and organizing and sorting, and then you were getting it out, but it's just a different medium. That's fascinating. I think to me, I find that to be evidence of how the skills that librarians have are still very relevant, no matter what era we're in, no matter what the technology might be. The basic skills, the basic needs that librarians have always met, or still need to be met. That must be tremendously satisfying to know that something you created has had this whole, probably a much larger and longer lived life than you expected it to have, and achieved so many wonderful goals.
Yeah. And the other thing that I'm happy about is the law list that I created. So around the same time that I created Ent Law, I started paying attention to what other lists existed at the time. And I kept on maintaining a list of other lists for librarians, for lawyers, for students. So I was sort of like figuring out how different aspects of our legal information profession were connecting with each other through listservs. So the law lists grew, but they enabled people from all types of areas to be able to plug into, like if you were a law student, you could find a law student list and meet other law students virtually. So that kept on, and professors would ask me about, do you have a listserv on immigration law? Is there a listserv on admiralty law? Because they wanted to connect to other professors. And meeting them that way, it was great. I mean, I love being in the center, not really the center, but information going all different ways. So that was really good.
Well, it's interesting. That is really a very traditional librarian kind of thing. You were collecting and organizing and sorting, and then you were getting it out, but it's just a different medium. It's fascinating. I think to me, I find that to be evidence of how the skills that librarians have are still very relevant, no matter what era we're in, no matter what the technology might be. The basic skills, the basic needs that librarians have always met, or still need to be met.
Yeah, and I think it would be good to extend those skills beyond areas where you would think librarians would be doing that. Step into a breach because you have the skills to fill a need that you might not have thought of. Think about using those skills that way. I have two other favorite things that I do.
Good, very good.
When I was at Minnesota, I promised to do for this immigration law faculty member a presentation on legal research on the internet. But something got lost in the communication, and I didn't realize I had to actually be there to do it. So when I found out I had to be there, I'm like, okay, what I'll do is I'll just create a guide to legal research on the internet so that they could, this is minority law faculty, so that they could use the guide. And it didn't take me very long to do. And that guide to legal research on the internet persisted. Like, people wanted to publish it. They wanted to know if I was updating it. It persisted into like the 2000s. And that to me is something I never can figure out, is why did that little act that I did resonate so much? And the other thing that I did that I liked is I tried a different, I thought you might be interested in this, different presentations attempt at ALL one time where I decided to do collecting foreign law as a Jeopardy game.
Uh,
And that resonated too. People are still asking me, oh, I was at that session where you did a Jeopardy game. So it's interesting to me the pieces of information that people pick up on and learn from. So.
That's a very good point. Very good point. It's also interesting to me that the things that you've identified, several of them were initiatives that began when you were at Minnesota, but that have persisted for many, many years. And I think to me, and I have to go back to Mr. Spruce because I think one of the important aspects of a true librarian scholar is that you don't just do something and then walk away from it. The thing that gives it its true value is that you continue to work on it, you continue to maintain it, you continue to update it, you continue to make it relevant, and you certainly have done that with your projects. Not that you aren't doing new things all the time, but and that sometimes that is a problem too. You've got so many things going, but very good. So you've been involved in librarianship for a couple decades now. One way or the other. Now that I know your early history, even longer than that, really. I'm curious if, and you've been on the cutting edge of quite a number of things, so maybe you can help us identify, at least from your point of view, what have been the most important changes that have occurred in librarianship or legal information or both over the course of your career.
I think that one of the changes has to do with information access in the value of information. So the first cutoff, I think, is when we moved over from Gopher to Web, and organizations and libraries could put information up on the internet. It made it possible for libraries that had no foreign and international law collections, or just a little bit, to start finding information like treaties and so on the internet. And then when we moved from the web to databases of that information, you could basically, if you didn't have a foreign international law collection, subscribe to Hide Online, and you've got a lot of what you needed for basic international legal research. And for foreign legal research, you have all these legal information institutes for South Africa. You have Legifrance, so you have government-published free information, and you have other institutional published free access to law. So I think the biggest change is the online sources being made freely available by individuals on the internet or in pretty low-cost databases, making, for my profession, foreign and international law more easily.
Really widen the accessibility, which is fortunate because, as you've identified, the importance has grown.
Right. Right. But with that, what you had also is before you needed to have specialists, people with expertise in locating the law. So with that, the other change that you had is really the fear that Kathy Price had about the next generation. You had more like not a need for information expertise existing in one person. So now I can rely on the information that's out there on the internet and the databases, and my colleagues who can speak Thai or Chinese anywhere around the world, because I don't speak those or read them. So the information provider doesn't have to be in one person. It's more dispersed as well.
So at the time, Kathy her thinking was probably correct, but she couldn't predict the future, and so maybe in a way, I won't say it solved itself, but it solved it in perhaps a different way than she anticipated.
Unexpected ways. And I think another unexpected change is the devaluing of print towards electronic. And with that, you have less need for the bibliographic knowledge about the print as well. So.
That makes sense. And it's interesting, I don't think that is actually limited to foreign and international law. Certainly in the same way that Adolf Spruce had that bibliographic knowledge about those materials, and that was so important. You had other librarians who had bibliographic knowledge about 18th century, 19th century legal literature generally. And frankly, we don't see that very much anymore. But again, you've got databases where it's readily available.
Readily available, and the problem is getting, before the patron or the user thought of going to the expert, the subject, bibliographer, whatever. With the database available, we're losing that, oh, there might be a person who knows, who might be able to steer me through these resources.
Yeah, I would think that the challenge of the databases would be that, as you say, there isn't anybody in the middle. You've got the end user going directly to the database, and who knows if he or she will really pick the right thing.
Yeah.
They'll pick up something. Is that the best? Is there something that's better than something?
Right. And unfortunately, the access to information sources are not being taught or being used. So this is like a little thing of mine.
Okay.
Subject headings are going away. And the thing with being, when you start out in foreign law librarianship and you don't have a lot of foreign language skills, Library of Congress subject headings enable you to look up a book in English, even though you're looking for a French book in English about some subject, some cataloger has put that book under that subject heading. If people don't know about subject headings, or subject headings are not being used, the ability to use that controlled vocabulary to get to that foreign language resource is like gone. I mean, there are other ways to get around it, but it's sort of bothering me.
Yes, no, I think that's a very good point.
And indexes and digests too are the same thing. Some books are being published without indexes. So there's a lot of information that's not controlled out there, and I don't know that you can link enough with expertise, subject expertise, to get that information the same way. It's a challenge.
Very good point. I'd like to switch gears a little bit by asking you to reflect on some of the individuals you've met and worked with during your career. You've already mentioned quite a few, and this is just an opportunity perhaps to identify anyone else that you've worked with who you might view as a mentor, or just some people that you really respect in our profession.
The one person in my area of specialty, I'm going to focus on that. And
that's fine.
Yeah, is Dan Wade at Yale. Dan Wade is one of the quieter leaders. I can be loud sometimes as a person in my profession, but he's one of the quieter leaders. And what he does is he mentors the new people coming into the profession. And he also pioneered a few things that I think were important for the Foreign Comparative and International Law Special Interest section. So he started the working groups. So there, when we go to AALL, it's really hard when you're new to connect with people. But he started these working groups on Asian law, Soviet law at the time, now Central and East European law, so that if you worked in that area or had the language skills, there was a place for you to go and you could discuss issues that you had that year at AALL with those materials. And then he also set up a table at the annual lunch, whatever. Because when you go to the annual lunch and you don't know anybody, that you don't know a place to
Yeah,
sit.
it's intimidating.
Yeah, so he reserved the table for FCILSIS members, so he had a place to be and connect up. So, and he started this gift every year at AALL. The newest member gets a bottle of wine of the FCILSIS. So he's very welcoming, and he's a good mentor to the SIS. And I think Mary Rumsey does something similar in terms of
Mary's at Minnesota.
she's at Minnesota in terms of encouraging people. Mila Rush, who I mentioned before, co-founded Intlaw with me. She's another client leader, and I think she's retired now. She started the Electronic Issues Working Group, which I'm very happy she did that, because more and more foreign international law resources become online. It was good to have a working group for the SIS. And she started Needs and Offers Out, which enabled us, as we're tossing our print materials, to offer them to a library that might fit them in their collection before we toss
Sure.
them.
Mhm.
So, and Dietrich Panier, he was the first, one of a colleague of Mr. Spruitt's, who sort of welcomed me in when I was trying to replace a source of amusement for him. Because he's sort of like a European gentlemanly type, and I'm totally informal.
Uh-huh.
So it always amused me when I emailed him, because I refused to actually say, "Dear Mr. Panier." I always say, "Hi, Mr. Panier." Always thinking he's over there in Germany. He's the retired librarian at the Federal Supreme Court, the Bundesgerichtshof. So, yeah.
I just want to add about Dan Wade that I think your colleagues at FCIL recognize his contributions. I know there's one of their, it's not their highest award, is named after Dan. I always thought that was very appropriate. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought him up.
And Tom Reynolds also is recognized for his outstanding publications, and he's another one who I admire. When I was starting out, my first FCILSIS meeting, I got up and I was like, no one's writing anything that we really need, something like that. Basically, I had looked at what was available in the field, and I wanted something, that enabled you to answer a lot of questions,
Mm-hmm.
or, enable to teach a class. And he came up with the foreign law guide, so I was an upstart. I learned something, wait until you've been around a while before,
Well,
so
he should be thanking you, because obviously he worked very hard to create that publication, but it's an award-winning publication. And
It's
renowned for it. So.
right. And next to foreign legal periodicals,
Absolutely.
the maintaining of that, both of them is hard enough, and he's done other things, so
Yes.
it's really good.
Very much so. Well, you've served many roles in the law library profession, made many contributions, really too many to fully list. I'm not going to try to do that, but I do want to single out your work as the chair of two of AAL's special interest sections. We've already mentioned the Foreign Comparative and International Law, SIS, but you also, a little bit later in 1999 to 2000, were the chair of the Computing Services, SIS. And then you served as a member of the AALO Executive Board from 2005 to 2008. So can you share any stories or any of your thoughts about those particular contributions that you've made to our profession?
The FCIL SIS chair was, I think, something that's I had been involved in the SIS. I had been secretary, helped create programming, so I'm very good at coming up with ideas for programs for AALL.
It's an important
I enjoy
attribute.
doing them. I also get to meet people that way.
Yeah.
So to me, it's one of the ways you move up in any profession, I guess. You volunteer, you're active, and you do things you say you were going to do. What I learned from being chair is that it's one thing to be on the other end, like suggesting things, But to make things happen is another level of responsibility. And it was, while I was chair, it was also the 10th anniversary of the CSIS. So we had to pick souvenirs. And one thing that I learned is just never pick pens as souvenirs. But,
You heard it here first.
Yeah. The other thing is that I got to really get to know AALL headquarters and interact with the people there. And I became very respectful of the responsibilities of leadership from that end. And interacting with them was, I think, a learning experience too. And the computing services SIS, I tend to be interested in a lot of things, so I don't think a year has passed that I haven't been a member of 10 SISs. And caucuses and caucus, whatever. And because I'm very interested in a lot of things. So Ken Hirsch saw me at some AALL meeting in a hallway somewhere and decided to ask me to run for chair. And I said, why not? I'm a member. And I actually had a platform that I wanted to run on. So I ran on the platform of everyone is a computing services librarian. And it's something you could actually say for foreign and international law librarianship. You need to have some level of how to find a treaty and so on.
Very good.
Yeah. And it was really interesting for me as a generalist to lead specialists in this area. And ever since then, Ken Hirsch, I learned something about leadership. Ken Hirsch picked me. And because he picked me, I had to come through. And because he picked me, I have continued to be active, extra active in the CSSIS. And I did the Web 2.0 challenge. I continue to, I follow them wherever they're going. If they're going to be on Facebook, I'm there. If they're on Twitter, I'm there. And the most recent thing is Law School Tech Talk. Every Monday, I'm there, Law School Tech Talk. So I keep on thinking that I'm going to learn computing by osmosis, And they're very friendly and welcoming. And I couldn't...
They're Ken Hirsch, they're the karaoke people.
Exactly. And with the executive board, I was very thrilled to be picked. Now I'm in the leadership, top leadership of AALL, among people who had also reached that status, and it was amazing to me. I didn't realize this, but I must be like someone who's fascinated by leadership, because I really enjoyed those sessions where they were telling you about how to be a nimble leader. Yeah. and I love looking at the different styles, different ways that people have of injecting their voices and making change happen. I came into the executive board at the same time as Steve Anderson, so I really value that. Yeah, current president. So I value that we shared the similar experience at the time. So it was good.
That's fabulous. I just can't help but say that I can't imagine there isn't anything that you're interested in. So I'm not surprised to hear you say you're interested in leadership. In addition to these positions that you've already talked about, you've also been an active member of the Chicago Association of Law Libraries, the International Association of Law Libraries, the American Society of International Law, the ABA, ALS, not to mention ALA and SLA, and I'm sure there are a few that I've left out. But obviously from that list, public service outside your own institution is important to you. So just a kind of a general question, what has it meant to you, both professionally and personally, to be so active in professional organizations?
It's helped me do my job better. It's helped me help other people. The American Society of International Law welcomed librarian participation from the very beginning of my career, a regular program on how to find international legal information. Librarians provide reference service during the ASIL
Really?
meeting. Yeah, yeah. And we now have our own International Legal Research Interest Group. But when we go there, our faculty are there too. So it was the beginning of how do you partner with your, I guess, stakeholders, your users, in helping them do their work and learning what they do and sharing information. So with International Association of Law Libraries and ASIL, they both focus on substantive sessions. They have substantive sessions and they have some legal research components. We're learning the area, our field, so we're better able to help our users do their research. And I try to do like activities that can help me make my research guides more relevant, more important, more useful. So it's again that interchange thing. And with ALA and SLA, my memberships go in and out because I just a lot to keep track of. But what I like is I get different perspectives on librarianship. There was a time when I was like, okay, this is too much. I'm going to focus on foreign and international law. But when I'm doing that, the general librarians and the specialized librarians are doing things like thinking about changing their names and different kinds of resources, if business resources, different ways of looking at government documents, international documents. We're foreign and international law librarians dealing with these same foreign and international documents. So being part of all these groups gives me a more open view of information and how really if you're just looking at your own world, you don't realize there's information over there that's useful for you. And some of the things that happen in special librarianship, I think general special librarianship is something that maybe should have been happening or is happening in law librarianship now. Realizing that your position is fluid, you know, your identity is fluid and should be. What are your skills? Does it meet this need? The fact that you're a cataloger doesn't mean that you can't provide public services or be in public services. The ways that you can be useful to your users, even if your position says that you're doing something else. I'm not being clear about that.
No, I think I understand what you're saying, but I think the one of the larger messages I'm getting from what you're saying about all of this activity in the professional organizations is that it better enables you to do your job. And I think, and I don't want to speak for you, so if I say something now that's not true, please let me know. But from everything that you've said about the people that you've interacted with and met in your professional activities, it would strike me that on a personal level, it's just been a lot of fun and developed friendships that go beyond the professional and merge into your personal life as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So, sort of the last question about professional activities is that, you're at the University of Chicago. There's obviously some institutional support on some level of all this, but I think newer law library or library colleagues feel challenged in today's do more with less environment to just be able to do my job, let alone to go outside and do professional activities. I just wonder if you would have any thoughts that you would want to share with a newer librarian, any advice about kind of how to balance, how to work professional service and activities into one's career.
It's important to be involved in professional activities that actually help your institution. If possible, something that your supervisor or boss would want you to do, because it helps your career to be recognized that this needed to happen. So everything that you do, make it something that you can use in your work somehow that you can bring back to your institution, and a new idea, something that can help if you have faculty liaison, something that can help the professors that you work with, and you can negotiate. I was reading about Rado Coates. You can negotiate around rules, so you can participate the way you want to. So, for instance, if you feel more comfortable editing, you could choose to edit. Volunteer as much. You can volunteer, but volunteer what you can do. Because the other thing that's important is to come through when you're promised to do something as well. And don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call someone. Even if you don't have money to go on to travel and go on trips. Sometimes the webinars that are given, there are some free webinars that you can take. And always try to follow up so you can make the personal connections.
And isn't it true that in today's world it's actually possible to participate quite a bit without actually physically leaving your institution?
The listservs, Twitter, Facebook, there are different ways that you can never have to leave your office.
Yeah, and a lot of work, even committee work, can be done electronically. So face-to-face meetings, while certainly important, aren't necessarily absolutely required. We're nearing the end of our conversation, but I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to touch on any topics that might be important to you, but which we haven't talked about yet. So is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
Yeah. When I had the law library management course with George Grossman, he taught me one thing, at least this is the only thing I can remember, is to fill in gaps. And ever since then, I've been trying to fill in gaps, and I think it's really important for a variety of reasons. If information needs to be out there and you fill it, it's helping other people, not just yourself, and then you contribute something to the profession. You can fill in gaps by writing, you can fill in gaps by teaching, you can fill in gaps by acting. So I was thinking about this, I've been thinking about this a lot, how in our library, for instance, we have different skills, people with different language skills, people with different other types of skills in our law school. And all of us are contributing to the law school's mission in our own ways, even if we're catalogers or public service librarians. There are different ways beyond your job that you can, help a student group do something. So.
Very good, very good. Thank you so much. Lyonette Louis-Jacques, on behalf of Pat Kehoe, Michelle Wu, and Dick Spinelli, I want to thank you for participating in this Oral History of Law Librarianship project. I know you have a busy schedule and it's not easy to fit us in, but I'm very appreciative. Your remarks will be a valuable addition to the project and will be of interest both to current colleagues and to those who will join the profession in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Frank.